I'm here with Betty Busby in part 2. So in part 1, we learned how to marble fabric, which was unbelievably cool. And now we're going to use it.
Yes, we are. I love fish, and they come in so many patterns. I thought that was perfect for our marbled fabric. So the first thing we're going to do is take one of our poured pieces of fabric, and we're going to put it face down and put fusible web on the back.
Now, fusible web, for people who don't know, is just something that has adhesive on both sides, that's heat activated. So it's like double-sided tape, but made out of, you know, a fibrous substance of some kind, a non-woven substance.
Yeah, it's spun glue. It is spun glue.
That's a great way of describing it.
Exactly. It's a web of glue, and
now you're using parchment paper so that it doesn't stick to your iron.
It will stick to your iron, and the other thing is we're going to have to remember to not let our iron touch our painted surface.
Very important.
Because acrylic paint doesn't like irons very much. So you would take the pattern that's provided online and pin it to your marbled fabric and cut it out. So this is what you get.
So cute. I see the fish already.
Now I have chosen a a hand-dyed fabric for the background.
It looks like water.
Yeah, and I'm just using felt as a backing. This is the small piece. I don't need to use batting.
Oh, so you're not
backing.
using a sandwich. You're just using felt and fabric.
Well, it's a skinny sandwich.
I love it.
So we have our little fish here, and he is simply placed on the backing
pad, right?
Yeah, so he is placed on the backing, and I cut his little side fin, which is in the pattern. I cut a little slit under his gill and inserted this fin because
so it's nice and dimensional.
The fishes all have this side fin, and it's usually clear, so we can. I just cut it from a little piece of fabric that didn't have any paint on. So all we need to do is position him.
Again, covering it with parchment.
Covering it with parchment so it doesn't goober up your iron.
I love that, and it's so much fun to see that little piece of marbled fabric becomes this big fish. There's something when you cut things out that it almost makes them somehow more spectacular, more special.
And you can collage these together to your heart's content. So now we're going to take this over to the sewing machine and
tack it on down.
Yes.
So I know you said to me that you don't need to be a super experienced stitcher in order to do this. You can just use a straight stitch pretty much.
That's right.
We're not even talking about like free motion or anything like that. This is very easy.
That's right. All of these stitching lines are marked on the pattern. So with this, I basically just stitch around the edges.
So you're just going to stitch around the edges of the fish to create an outline. Now, is this functional stitching, like the fish is going to fall off if we don't do it, or is that fusible holding it on?
The fusible will hold it on, but we're going to use our stitching lines as part of the design, which I'll show you when we finish.
So now you're using a white thread.
Right, so I used a white thread here because I wanted it to show up on camera. But basically, I would choose to use a darker thread that is a darker shade than one of these colors. So see how I'm stitching along the edge?
I see that. It goes right along there.
Yes, and the other stitching lines are marked on the pattern, so we would stitch in the rays of the fins of the fish.
Cool, and I know that we have one that's already stitched out, which is super cool, and here it is.
That's right.
It's unbelievably beautiful. I can see that you ironed the fin down on this one instead of leaving it waving. So it's really whichever you want.
Right. It's not really attached, so it can come off, but I ironed it down because when I fuse it, I just iron the whole thing.
Okay.
So it's up to you. So now we're going to do a little bit of what I call prose production. The first thing we're going to do, because there is so much pattern in here, and because fishes typically are lighter underneath, because that is how they protect themselves, is predators have a hard time seeing them from underneath.
I didn't know that.
That's why they're light underneath, because the predators are looking up towards the sky.
And it makes them
darker on the top.
in with the sky. That is such a cool fun fact.
Yeah. So now we're going to take them thinned down paint.
So I love this. You don't have to have the perfect piece of fabric or have everything placed. Like, that's one of the reasons you didn't put it on a light box, the pattern or anything, so that you could see it, because you know that you can do post-production and get exactly what you want.
Yes, traditional quilting is you had to pick out the exact right fabric and you had to sew it together perfectly and you had to quilt it perfectly, and guess what? You don't have to. You can go back and you can work on it after it's stitched.
I think that's so cool that you're stitching right over that dark thread and not even worrying about it. Now I noticed that this is not a super opaque paint.
Right, I thinned it down. It actually is just regular fabric paint that's thinned down.
And it actually matches the translucency of this little fin, which is a nice thing. I kind of am losing where's the fin and where's the paint.
Exactly, and the base pattern will show through a little bit, which is what we want.
Now how did you get all these circles?
These are made with the stencil, which is also a pattern online, and you just place the stencil on, and I think it comes out nicer if you just brush a tiny, tiny bit of paint on and leave some of it to be see-through.
I was going to say, here's the stencil, and you cut it just out of a sticky stencil, like vinyl material, and that way with the fabric, it adheres.
Yes.
Like, you can pull it off, it will adhere straight on there when I push it down, and I can easily stencil.
Let me show you. Let me show you really quickly.
That's not hard at all. I feel like I could do that, Betty.
Right, and you know, and I used it to kind of sew around when I stitched the background.
Yeah, super
but
easy.
It's optional.
But that's not all the post-production you said.
Oh no, but wait, there's more.
I'm excited.
So I have some colored pencils here, and I'm going to go over all of these thread lines with the colored pencil. This tends to really give it a lot of depth.
Yeah.
See when I color in the gills here?
I'm rethinking all my fabric. I want to go home and use my colored pencils on it.
You can really get a 3D effect here. So I would go over all these fin lines.
Okay, and that's just adding like almost a shadow is what it looks like to me.
That's exactly what it is. You can, you know, make a real three-dimensional look. We have light underneath, we have darker on the top.
And I should point out that this looks like a green.
Yes, this is a dark green. I chose a color
instead of black or something like that.
Right, and well, I chose a color that's in the same family but darker, and that is also the same color I used with the thread. So I'm kind of matching my thread color, so everything goes together. So I would spend my time to, you know, take time coloring all these in, and then but wait, there's more. I can't help it. I do that.
It is addicting. Like I find that with doodling too. Once I start, I just don't want to stop.
Okay, now think eye makeup.
Okay.
So what do you do to make your eyes stand out?
Well, I give myself a little eyeliner and a cat's eye myself.
Here we go, eyeliner. So I have a black ballpoint pen. You can use a ballpoint pen or you can use a tiny marker.
Okay.
So color in his pupil, but I'm making a nice heavy black line around his eye to make his eye pop. And then
you know, a ballpoint pen gives you so much control as opposed to paint or a paintbrush.
You don't have to worry about it bleeding, and they're very permanent, as anyone who has gotten one has their pen protector on their white shirt when they're going to their engineering job. So now I just have a couple of contrasting colors of this colored pencil, and I'm just going to color in the eye.
So one of the easy ways that someone told me how to understand contrasting colors is you're using a red pencil on a green background, and red and green are Christmas colors. They're also sports team colors that you'll very often see, and usually those are high contrast choices that they make. So if you think of most sports teams, that's how you can get your contrasting colors.
And that is a great thing to keep in mind for fiber, because we tend to love all the bright colors, but you need things that have a lot of punch and a lot of contrast. So that's why we're having black in there. That's why we're having the dark lines to make everything else pop.
That is so cool, and if we look at the finished one, I can see how much all that post-production really makes a huge difference in making everything pop. And even on the larger piece, each of those fish has such distinct personality because of the marbling in their body, and I can see those side fins are a little more loose. That huge background web is gorgeous. Is that a stencil also?
That is actually sun printing.
Betty, you have so many cool techniques.
Oh, yes.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Thank you for having me.